Welcome to our Wednesday workshops as we get set up and get things rolling over here. We're glad to see you guys this morning. Today we're going to talk about child
level maturity. That's right.
Yeah, this one's going to be a great, maybe a little painful.
Might be a little painful.
Maybe a lot painful, but very good.
Yeah.
So make sure you listen all the way through. There's going to be nuggets all the way throughout this whole thing. We're going to try to keep it to an hour, but we have so much to share today. Good morning, Sherry.
Hey, how you doing this morning?
All right.
Let's
dive in.
Let's just
You're
jump
ready.
in.
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Make sure we don't die of heat exhaustion over here. We've got some temperature challenges in our little makeshift studio.
Yeah. So.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready if you're ready.
Let's do it. I'm trying to get up all the lovely.
I see it.
All the people. But here we go.
You good?
I'm good. Oh wait.
Hey.
Oh.
There we are.
There it is. All right.
Okay.
Let's do it. All right. So we're gonna start from the top. So we're gonna do a little review.
Yep.
We'll do this every week. So you can, if you watch it out of order or whatever, you can see where we were and what we did and what the review is and how we're going to do this. So
yeah, and I'd really encourage you too, if you haven't seen the maturity overview and the infant maturity videos, go back and watch. You can go ahead and watch this one all the way through first if you like.
Yeah.
But make sure you go back. You'll learn a lot, and we'll mention some things here and there. But do yourself a favor. There's so much good material going back. So
yeah. All right. That's not going to help for me. Okay. So maturity. So what is maturity? So the definition of maturity is reaching my God-given potential in every stage and age of life. So again, like we talked about, there's 5 stages. Mm-hmm. So again, in every stage that there's goals and there are not goals, that there's needs and that there's tasks, or there's tasks of the person and of the community. And so the goal is just to know when you're mature, that you've reached every stage, that you've done, that you've
completed every
task in that stage.
Right. Yep. So the 5 stages are infant, child, adult, parent, and elder.
Yes.
Where this concept came from is Life Model. Jim Wilder is the one who first developed it, and really what it is, the maturity stages, is really just a map about where we are, where we're trying to go, and how we need to grow in maturity. So we're going to talk, our goal each time we do one of these videos is not just to throw a bunch of information out and walk away, but to give you really, really practical steps to not only recognize where you might be today, but what you can do to grow through, and also too, what you can do to help others grow in areas that may be immature. So if you're a parent, what are some things that you need to be doing to help your kids grow fully in maturity, so that when they reach adulthood, which is 13.
Well, that's pretty.
Well, we mentioned it last time.
Oh, that's true. So,
and we'll explain more in the next video about that. But and you'll learn a little more in this video toward the end of what that looks like. But also too, it may be other people that you're mentoring in the community. It may even be friends.
Yeah.
But none of this is meant to be a tool to badger other people with,
to judge
or to judge or criticize, or judge or criticize yourself.
Yep.
As we talk about maturity, super, super valuable. It really is what makes you successful in your relationships. It is what also God intended. And when people are fully functioning in their maturity, the community is stronger. Everyone is stronger. When you have strong elders, strong parents in a community, then everyone flourishes. Everyone wins. And so, but maturity doesn't give you value.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't give you value. Now, maturity, like she said, is valuable, but it doesn't give you value. It doesn't determine your worth, because you are worthy because you are here, and you're valuable because you're here.
Right.
But it does add to your community, and it does add to your life. And so that's something you just want to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through these. Maturity never ends. It's an ongoing thing. And so the great thing about this is, like Janelle said earlier, you start where you are, and you keep moving forward. So you can see some of the things that you may have missed, and so you can continue to grow in those things. So it's not going to, again, determine who you are. but it's a marker. Say, okay, this is where I'm at. I need to move forward. Maturity never ends, and so
Yeah. And people need community too to stay, not only get unstuck in maturity, but also to stay unstuck. It's important that you continue to stay plugged in with other people. They're the ones who actually help make you grow, and they're necessary in helping meet the tasks that are at each stage. Also, too, a person's age doesn't at all determine their maturity.
No, it does not at all. It has no effect. Not only it has no effect on it, but it doesn't determine where they are. You can be a 18-year-old who's really looking out for others, and you could actually be in the parent stage,
right?
Because of your maturity, because you've learned the things you need to learn, and now you're looking out for the well-being of others, and you're giving sacrificially, which we'll get into next week. But at that point, you can have not married, no biological kids, but you are functioning in the parent role. Yeah. You could also be 65 years old and have grandkids and be functioning as an infant.
Right. So stay tuned for what that looks like. And one of the important things about maturity is being honest about it. That, we have to start where we are, not where we wish we were. A lot of our journey and growth and healing came when we started to realize what our gaps were in maturity and then began to approach those. Even though it's super hard, it was really hard to say, oh man, like this is an infant need that didn't get met, and this is an infant task I have to work on in my 40s.
Right.
Or a child task I have to work on in my 40s.
For sure.
But what a gift. And it's better to know it where you are and start to work on it than to never have known. And that's what today is about, is just providing information to really know where you are, to take a good look and take an inventory and figure out what to do next. Let's see where we are on the map, and let's see what we need to do to move forward.
Yeah. So one thing, these first two, the one we did last week on infant maturity and the one we're doing this week today on child maturity, are probably the two most difficult ones to hear.
For sure.
Because these are the ones that start to, you can get triggered. Really, you can get triggered by some of the things that you're going to hear, because it's pretty tough, because you can be upset that you maybe not received something, or how come I didn't do this for my kids, or why did my parents do this for me? Right. And so it's very triggering. And so as you go through these stages, as you listen to these, you may notice some triggers that happen in you. Like, for instance, you may be really sad and say, I didn't get what I needed, for whatever the reason might be, and you become sad.
You just feel sad about it.
You feel sad about that. And there may be some anger, like, why didn't I get what I needed? Why didn't my parents do what they said they were going to do? Or why didn't my parents do this for me?
Yeah. That was definitely a feeling I felt when I first learned about this and realized what my gaps were, for sure.
And mine was shame, which is the next one, which is like, why I should know how to do this. Like, I should know how to do this. I'm old enough. I'm 42 years old, 43 years old. I should know how to do this. And there was a lot of shame that was attached to that in me. So it took some working through that, just to be able to come to own my own story and just say, I had great parents, but in this area, I just didn't receive what I needed. And so now, instead of wallowing in that and being shameful about it, it's like, okay, I know what it is. There's a name to it. Now I can go and fight it and go get it.
Yeah.
And work it out.
And I think actually in some ways it relieved other shame that you had, a feeling like you were broken, or what's wrong with me, or why can't I XYZ.
Absolutely.
Then it gave you language, and it was suddenly like, oh, okay, now I know why, even though then there's a whole other grieving process of understanding why. But
yeah. And then the other one is judgment. And what I mean by that is, when you start to see it everywhere, when you understand it and you begin to see it, then you're like, oh, well, shoot, man, that person's an infant. They need to fix that and do that. And then you start judging everybody, and you start judging
especially
yourself.
People that have disappointed you or let you down, or that you're in conflict with. It's super easy to start to feel critical toward them. But that, again, is not what this tool is for.
No.
It really is to look in the mirror. Unless it's people that you're helping lead, whether it's children you're helping raise, or people you're helping mentor, then you have a little bit more authority to look at them. But still, always go ahead and take a full inventory of where you are on the map first.
Absolutely. So those are the four things. So sadness, anger, shame, and judgment. So those can be So you might feel some of those triggers.
Even today, watching this video.
Watching this video. And so, like we've talked about in the other ones, if you do feel some of those things pop up, I encourage you just to hit pause. We're not going anywhere. And just take a few seconds and just have appreciation and just kind of
Quiet yourself. And just listen to what the Lord has to say about it. You may need to watch this in chunks.
Yeah.
In reality, or you might find yourself checking out partially through this video because it might feel overwhelming depending on some things that you learn. And so feel free to come back. It's all right. Yep. Like he said, we're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere. We'll be right here.
Yep. So we already shared with you what our goals were, but again, it's really to help you identify where you are, help you grow in really practical ways, and then also help you better lead your community.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick infant maturity review.
Okay.
Since it is important, all these stages build on each other. So we don't want to take for granted that you've watched the infant video or that you remember the key pieces. So we're going to go ahead and hit those real quick. So the first stage is infant, 0 to 3, and their primary task is learning how to receive.
Right. And so, because that's all they can do.
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
That's
all they can do is receive. So that's why they're here, is to receive. And so a mature infant should be able to receive, as we just said. They should be able to rest and know how to rest. They should be able to synchronize or attune with others, regulate their emotions, and self-calm. So what that looks like is if you have a child that is, or an infant between 3 years old, and they start to cry, or they get out of control, or they're upset, or they're angry or something, then we should be able to, with some help, guidance from us, they should be able to calm themselves and come back
to neutral.
Come back to neutral. And so that leads right to the next one: return to joy from every emotion. So again, they should be able to do that. And again, those are things that we, because they only receive, we as a community have to teach them and walk them through that. Be the same person over time. So they shouldn't have crazy mood swings, even as infants and even as babies. Sometimes that happens. So they should be able
and they'll start to form a personality toward the end of that 3 years, where you start to kind of know them and there's some consistency in who they are. Granted, 0 to 3, just when you think, especially 0 to about 18 months, just when you think who they are and what they're doing, then the next thing you know, teething happens, and then they're a monster child again. That's not what it's referring to, but you should start to see a consistent personality beginning to develop, of who they are.
Yep. Have an awareness of their needs and how to meet them. So, like we talked about earlier, the attuning part is where a baby cries, and then we attune to that, and we begin to understand that, well, this whine means they're hungry, and this whine means that they're tired, or this cry means that their diaper's dirty. And so they should have an awareness of what they need. So by the time they turn 3, they should understand that, oh, this is hunger that I'm feeling. That, oh, I'm uncomfortable in my diaper, or whatever the case may be, and then begin to know how to meet that need. So if that is asking, if that is a certain cry or a certain whine that the parents have already attuned to, and then we begin to teach them how to use words, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But understand what their needs are, and then what they need to do at their infant level to get it met.
Right. And so really that transition between infant and child is that time period and the skill of learning to recognize what they need and learn to begin to ask for it. So in that toddler stage, 3 years old, they should have some language to where they can not just, when they're thirsty, throw themselves on the floor in a melted mess, but be able to say, oh, recognize, 1, I'm thirsty and I want something to drink, and 2, have been taught by their community to ask for it. Not whine, not pitch a fit, not demand, but to ask and say, Mommy, can I have a drink? Or my kids always used to say, I'm thirsty. And my response was always, that's nice. Because because I had taught them how to ask, and I wanted them to continue to practice that skill. So they didn't get things from me by speaking into the universe. Random statements about life. It was, hey, if you need something from me, I really want you to practice the skill of asking that, because it's such an important skill in life. And as we'll talk about in this stage, when that's missed, it really does create some major challenges in adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that. So when an infant learns what's wrong and what they need in mark to transition, going from infant
to child. So child age is 4 to 12 years old. We've mentioned in previous videos that the next stage is adult. And based on Jim Wilder's research and actually culturally across the world, throughout scripture, even in brain science and brain development, by 13 years old, you should be able to be an adult. And we'll talk a little bit more about what an adult is and the definition. It doesn't mean you move out and, you know, all of that. But because really that child maturity, their whole goal is to take care of themselves.
Yes.
Is to be selfish.
Yes, that's it.
That's it. So by 13, that should be changing. And really, the primary goal at childhood stages is taking care of self, but really just taking care of one person. That's it.
Yep.
That's all that they're able to do, and which can be a little bit maddening because, you know, as a parent of a child, you're just like, oh my gosh, all they think about is themselves. That's all they're thinking about.
They're supposed to.
Yeah, it's actually their job.
Their job is to figure out what they need, how to ask for it, and how to figure what's best for them. And and we'll talk through all of that. Another one of those needs is to develop an individual identity. So understanding that I am a person and this is who I am. These are what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what's good for me. This is what's not good for me. And so those two are the major primary goals in this stage. So again, I don't know if we said this, but it's ages 4 to 12.
Yep.
Okay.
We did.
All right.
So childhood, I'm going to read this because it's just so well put, but childhood is a time of expanding your skill sets and exploring the world around you. In this way, children learn their place in the world, so they learn their identity by exploration and who their people are. So belonging and identity is also a key thing that is learned in childhood, and how to act like themselves in a way that gets their needs met.
Yeah.
So acting like themselves is securely knowing who I am and I'm capable of being present, asking for what I need. Whereas I could also, I guess the flip side of that would be, I learn to ask for what I need, but I learn it in a very unhealthy way, maybe by throwing a fit or withdrawing or anger, things like that. So, but the goal in childhood is really developing a person who's confident in themselves, know that they belong, know that they have an identity, and that they can operate in the world in an exchange to get their needs met in a healthy way.
Yeah. Yep.
So the biggest thing that a child lacks, remember, they're supposed to be selfish and they're supposed to know how to take care of one person. Learn how to, obviously.
Yes.
They don't show up at 4 years old and they're like, hey, I can take care of myself now. Thank you very much.
Cook my own dinner.
Yeah, this is an 8-year learning process.
Yes.
But one thing that they won't be able to do at the child level is take care of other people.
That is
really
correct.
the only person they can take care of and learn to take care of is themselves.
And the only person they should be
Yeah.
taken care of is themselves.
Yeah,
So.
and we'll talk a little bit later in the video about what happens when responsibility is placed on them to not just take care of themselves, but others as well. Not in a learning way, but in a responsibility way.
Yeah.
What happens in childhood
When basically we'll talk again, but when they start doing things above their maturity
stage.
stage.
When they're being placed into an adult or parent role.
Right. So, like we said earlier, every stage has needs and tasks. So there's things that the child needs, and there's needs and tasks. So there's things that the child needs, but there's also tasks that they have to complete.
Right.
And there's also tasks that the community or their family have to complete to help them
Meet their needs. Yeah. Right.
So there's needs and tasks in each level. And so we want to talk right now just some of the child stage needs that they have. So one of them would be help. They need help learning how to appropriately articulate their needs. So that is that space where, Janelle was talking about, when they say I'm thirsty, it's like, that's nice. What can I help you with something, or how? And you begin to coach them into being able to ask for what they need, because it's our joy to help them, and it's our joy to give them what they need. But it's also they need to learn how to ask for it.
Yes.
And appropriately articulate it, not throw a fit, not throw a temper tantrum, all of those things. But how do you appropriately ask for what you need? Challenge and encourage them to do difficult things. That's a huge one. That's a very huge one, because I know that's one thing that for me that I didn't receive when I was growing up was the challenge of doing difficult things. And what it looked like for me in adult life, real life, was that if it was too hard for me, or I felt it was too hard, then it must not be from God, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, because you weren't taught as a little, like, no, you actually are capable
Yeah.
to press through. And
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that as well. One other thing that a child needs is help doing what I don't feel like doing. So when you were in that situation and you didn't know how to do the difficult thing and didn't want to do the difficult thing, you really needed your community and your caregivers to step up and say, no, you actually really can do this, and model that for you. So,
Yeah. Well, it's a twofold thing too, because I didn't know how to ask for what I needed either.
oh, interesting. Yeah.
So
that did
I
come
knew
into play.
what I needed, but I didn't know how to ask for it.
So even when things were hard,
I couldn't.
asking when they got hard. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it became almost embarrassing to ask because I should know how to do it because I'm
12.
12 or I'm 10 or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So
Huh.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So one of the tools that we've learned about that is really helpful in this situation is the leadership square.
Yes.
So go ahead and explain it. You know, you're much more familiar with the leadership
Yeah.
square than I am.
So what it is, and it's funny because when we learned about it, I remember I was actually sitting next to Olivia, our daughter, and we learned about it. I looked at Liv and I went, "That's how we raised you." And she looked up at the board and she went, "Oh yeah."
we had no idea.
We had no idea. Totally God. We had no clue what we were doing, but that was it. So what it looks like is, so it's a square. Some of you out there know what it is, but basically how it works is the top of the square says it's I do, you watch. So as the parent or as the leader, it's I do it, and then whoever you're training or whoever you're teaching is watching you do it. So they're learning by example. So I do, you watch. And then as you move around to the other side of the square, it's the I do, you help. So what that looks like is I'm doing it, and then I'm going to ask you to help and do things what's inside of that I know you can do, and begin to show you how to do it. Now they're still watching, and so it's I do, you watch, and then it's I do, you help. And then we get to the bottom of the square, and this one over here is usually the longest phase, the I do, you help, because what happens is they begin to understand what kids don't, what you begin to see what they don't know.
Oh yeah.
So it's a long stage there because now they're learning what they don't know. And sometimes kids and even in adults when you're doing this, that stage can be very discouraging because they think they should know it, but they don't know it. And it's okay.
And you're catching gaps of,
Yeah.
of knowledge that they maybe didn't have. So like I just went horseback riding this weekend, and I've been horseback riding with the same woman now about a half a dozen times, and I've watched her every time she bridles the horse, every time she brushes the horse, every time she does, and I've been doing it, but I'm watching her do it, and then I do it. And this last time she slowed down and she said, okay, I want you to, you're going to do it. You're going to help me do it. I'm still going to do most of it, but you're going to help me do it. And so then I got my hands in there, and then it became more familiar and less distant.
Yeah.
And so, and she's walking me through the leadership square unknowingly.
And it's interesting because as you do it, you realize what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's someone close enough to fix your mistakes,
Right.
and close enough to correct and teach in the moment versus an hour later to say, yeah, you totally did that part wrong, and now we have a consequence from it.
Yeah.
They're really walking with
Then
you.
you can fix it in the moment. So we got the I do, you watch. So the I do, you help. And then it flips to the bottom of the square. Then it goes, you do, I help. And so what that looks like is now they're doing it on their own. They're doing it, but you're there to support them, just like with who was in horseback riding with. You were brushing the horse, so you were doing it, but she was right there to help fix things and correct things in the process, answer any questions that you may have had.
Right.
So you're there, you're teaching. It's all a teaching thing. And then when they finally get it, then they move to the end of it on the far other side of the square where it's you do and I watch, or I like it better, it says you do and I celebrate.
Yeah.
So it means that you've got it, you're doing it, you're running with it, and I'm there to cheer you on and give you any support you might need along the way. But really, it's you got it. You go do it.
And this is a great tool. We're teaching it in child maturity just because this is something that a parent, it's totally appropriate to walk through in childhood. But you can walk this through with anybody who, if you're carrying a skill that somebody doesn't have, like my friend who rides horses and knows all about horses, she's guiding me in such a healthy way through the leadership square that I get to grow and be confident in what I'm learning, because she didn't just hand me a horse and say good luck with that. She's actually slowly but surely walking me around the leadership square.
Yeah.
This could also look like because part of being a child is knowing how to meet your own needs. That's the whole idea. So we've talked about making a sandwich too.
Oh, yeah.
So this could look very simply for your kids. You know, they start out at 4 years old and they're like, I'm hungry. And so you say, okay, what do you need? Could you make me a sandwich? I want a sandwich. Okay, so you make the sandwich. At 4
Right.
years old, you're making the kid the sandwich.
Yep.
By 5, 6 years old, you're like, okay, help me get the bread out. Okay, you get the bread out. You get
know
the
where the
peanut
bread
butter.
is.
Yep, you know where the bread is. Get out the peanut butter and jelly. By the time they're 6 or so, they're up on the chair and they're buttering that bread and they're
Right.
making a hot mess of it. But you know what?
They're doing it.
and you're there to help to make sure that they're getting it on the bread. And then you're walking them all the way around the square to where, when they're 12 years old, they shouldn't be asking you to make a sandwich.
Right.
That's our end goal
That's the end
here,
goal.
is that they're going to make it all the way around the square. And so when they say, man, I'm hungry, you're like, hey, you know where the bread and the jelly and the peanut butter is? Go for it, kid.
Yep.
Or they're actually cooking on a stove too
Yeah.
by then, and they should be.
It should be.
So that's one way that's a real practical way that
Yeah.
you can walk a child around a leadership
Yeah.
square.
Absolutely. That's awesome. One of the things too that they need in that stage is the help evaluating of their consequences of behavior. So basically helping them, A plus B equals C. So if you do this, then this happens, which brings to this outcome.
Yeah, and so saving our kids from consequences is actually not helpful in that regard.
Yeah.
Because really the goal is teaching them that everything you do has an outcome to it. It could be a positive outcome and it could be a negative outcome, and sometimes the outcome actually has nothing to do with what you actually did. Sometimes life just happens.
Yep.
But the more that we save our kids from that, the bigger that disappointment is when they become adults and they realize, oh, there's math problems all day, every day. A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
And if A and B are bad, then C is bad. And if A and B are good, then C is usually good. And sometimes A and B equals D, and we're not quite sure why.
Yeah,
But we can
that's good.
actually recover together.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
really good. Let's see. Let's go to this one here. So also they need help sorting out feelings, imagination, and reality. And so what that means, so by usually up until the age of 5, if a child feels it, then it's real. So like if they feel it in their body, then it's going to happen. It's like, sometimes we get as parents, we get frustrated sometimes because we're like, our kid throws themselves on the floor because they want that toy or they want that candy, and we say no, and they literally pitch a fit like there's a demon coming out of them.
The whole world's
the
gonna
whole
end.
world's going to end, and you're like, what is going on? But it literally, to them, in their body, feels like they're going to die if they don't have that.
Yeah, it feels very real to them.
Very real to them.
So just keeping that in perspective, that should not be happening when they're 12.
Yes.
You're helping them realize what the difference is between reality and not reality. So the reality is the world isn't going to end because you didn't get the piece of candy. It's going to be okay. But
Right.
part of what knowing
Yes.
is don't disregard the fact that to them though that's still very real.
Don't disregard the feeling of hurt and frustration and despair. Acknowledge that and say, I completely understand that you feel like the world's going to end right now, but we're going to be okay.
We're gonna be
and we'll
okay.
get through it together.
Yep.
We'll walk through it together. So definitely do that. Feedback on guesses, attempts, and failures.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the whole goal of childhood is that you do guess, you
You
do
learn.
try, and you do fail. Like riding a bike is a great example of that.
Yep.
So providing feedback on guesses, riding a bike is one big guess. When you put a little one on a bike with no training wheels, like they're trying to read their body, they're trying to figure it out, and usually at least once there's a good spill or two.
Yeah.
And providing feedback. Oh, hey, if you don't brake so hard, you won't be trajected off the front of the bike. Or if you hold your steering wheel a little more firm, you're gonna steer a little more easy. Or
Yeah.
when you turn corners, don't turn so sharp.
Yeah, don't
You
lean
start-
so far.
Don't lean so
The
far.
little things like that. So yeah, also I think one of the things too that a child needs is, and I think this is also really important, is help developing talents and resources, helping them to realize that. Again, it's that helping them discover what they like, what they enjoy, what their talents are, who they are as individuals.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, I think in this situation too, it's a lot of what do the kids love to do, not what you as parents love to do.
That's good.
It's
That's
not.
good.
It's not. Let me develop. I played baseball, and high school, college, a little bit of semi-pro baseball, and I love the sport of baseball. And so when Trey started about 8, 7 or 8 years old, he started playing baseball. So I'm like, this is awesome. My son is following in my footsteps. I love this sport. So I'm coaching him and we're doing things. And by the time he got to be about 12, he loves the game, but his love for the game wasn't as deep as my love for the game.
Right.
And so he decided he didn't want to do that anymore, and we got him into martial arts, and that was the direction that he wanted to go at that time. And so as a parent, it's like, okay, we still went out and played catch in the yard, and we still did that, but it was the development of him. He realized that actually my talent is not in baseball, it's in martial arts. And that's what I want to do, and that's what's good for me. And so as a parent, not pushing baseball on him, but saying, okay, let's go, let's do martial arts, let's take you there.
And that was happening as his identity was being developed. So at 4 years old, we weren't like, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? A firefighter? Okay, let's go train in firefighting now that you're 4 years old.
Right.
No, they don't have a concept when they're 4. Remember, up until they're 5, their feelings are their reality. So, that was age appropriate, that when he's 10 or so, he's starting to really say, no, I think I'm really starting to know myself well. And as much as I love this, it's not something that I want to continue to devote a lot of my time to. And so, again, as we're talking about this child stage, I just think we need to keep in mind that when we say, as we're saying things, obviously at 4, your kid is not deciding for their own lives.
Right.
At 12, they really should be starting to really be able to articulate who they are, what they enjoy, and what they need. Because our goal through this stage is to help them develop their resources. So resources being, if you were to go out into the world today, do you have what you need to be able to survive?
Yeah.
Can you figure out what you need? Can you get what you need? And what are you good at? So as you're thinking about, because they're thinking about developmentally at that age, who am I? What am I going to do with this world? How do I contribute?
Right.
And the last key task of the community is also helping children figure out where they fit in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So knowing their family history, knowing God's history, where they fit in creation, knowing even just the U.S. history, pieces of that of who am I, where do I fit, and where do I belong? And knowing as well that I was created for a unique purpose, brought to this earth for a reason. And I actually am a contributing member of society.
Yep.
This world needs me to participate. And developing that young, I think alleviates a lot of where adults are struggling today. A lot of our young adults where
who am I?
Who am I?
How do I fit?
And how do I fit? Yeah.
And in the easiest way for those that have kids between the ages of like that 10 to 12 age, the easiest way is just tell them stories.
Oh yeah.
Just tell them stories about your family. I mean, that might mean you need to go do some research on your own family and how you got to here, how you got here, how you became, how did you start in music? How did you start in doing this? How does your family, like maybe there's a lot of athletes in your family, there's a lot of artists, or there's a lot of painters, or there's whatever it might be in your family. Like, how did that happen? And begin to explain and talk through the history of your family, and then what their mark on history is. Because I think that's a big one too. Your family's mark on history, and let your kids know that you are part of that history, and you can create a history of your own.
Right.
In our family and in the world.
Yeah, and I think belonging also plays a key piece here too. Simple things like, you look like grandpa. Oh my gosh, when you do that, it so reminds me of grandpa, or it so reminds me of your Aunt Sally. Knowing that I have a people that I belong to and that I'm like is such a fundamental need in childhood and in just the basis of identity. That's why people who are adopted often seek to find who they are and who they're connected to, because there's this deep inner longing to know that we belong somewhere and that we match other people around us. Yeah, so helping your kid know that we match here. And if you are an adoptive parent, letting them know that you still match here. So even if they don't know their biological family, that there are similarities between you, and that your history can be their history, and they begin to build a new history because they now have a family they belong to, even if there isn't a bloodline. Yeah,
and them understanding that, like for us, it was like, we're berries, and berries do this. Berries don't do that. Berries do this. And so even with adopted children, it's the same thing. It's like, no, you are engrafted in this family. Every piece of history that has been passed down to me is now passed down to you.
Yeah, which is biblical, right? Like we are grafted in as Gentiles into the Jewish heritage. And so the same thing happens in physical adoption. And I think we weren't intending on getting
No,
on this,
that's good.
but it is important, especially for adoptees who may not naturally fit in family history, to know that they still fully fit and they still fully belong.
Yeah.
So let's talk about child stage tasks.
Okay. Before we jump into that, I did want to say one thing, and you alluded to it, so there's also there's stages within stages. We're not going to get into all of those because that gets really deep, but just understand that. So like Janelle said, when we talk about a 4-year-old or something that a 12-year-old is doing, it doesn't mean that a 4-year-old should be doing it, and vice versa.
Yeah, it's all gradual.
Yeah, it's all, so literally everything builds on top of each other. So there's stages within the stages. So some of it may overlap as we talk through. So don't take it as like a wide berth of everyone between 4 and 12 should be doing this. No, there's and most of us in any type of child development, or if you've raised kids, or you have kids, you know, like you can tell, like, oh, they're ready to do this. And so I just want to say that before we move into these tasks.
And I think too, we're talking a lot about from a parent perspective and helping to help your kids mature, but also too, don't forget this whole conversation, which we kind of shift to that now, is about you and where you may or may not have received what you need, or been able to complete tasks that you needed anywhere between the ages of 4 and 12. So to keep that in mind, don't get stuck on unnecessarily age, but just general overall. Let's think together about the tasks that we're about to talk about, and was that something that I was able to complete from 4 till 40? Like, there were certain things that were just like, we had an extra 30 years on that, and
we still didn't
get that done. So so don't be afraid to say or to look at it that way, that just because it didn't happen in that little tiny window doesn't mean it didn't happen at all. But it may not have happened yet.
Yes.
So, all right.
Okay, go for it, babe.
So child stage tasks. Again, so when we say child tasks, means that this is the individual's responsibility. So as a child, it was my job to take care of myself and learn how to do that. Learn how to say what I think and feel and appropriately ask for what I need. My community's job was to help teach me how to do that, but it was also my job to learn it. If I chose to still throw a fit and my community allowed that until I was 12 or beyond, it probably is still evident in my life. But I think one key thing that's not even so much the fit throwing, but it's the asking part. That is a big deal. And this was a key thing that I learned in my healing process, that going back to the infant piece, I had not learned how to receive. I didn't have people who were reading my needs and just meeting them without me asking. And so when I got to this stage, I also didn't learn how to identify my own needs and ask for them. So that was one of the big things that I woke up to when I was 41 and in my healing process of, oh man, I have spent my whole life not knowing what I need and knowing how to ask for it. I just have expected other people to just figure it out for me and then meet it. And I've been super disappointed in my relationships because they haven't. So
but how can we if we don't know?
Right. And so step one really is, don't jump to the ask part.
That's good.
Because you can be asking for something in an awful way and not actually know what you need. So step one is actually identifying what you need. And this was really good in our counseling. And something that continually came up for me was, I'm so frustrated with Tennyson, blah, 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 whatever the reason was. And she's like, okay, well, what do you need? Like, what are you needing from him that he's not giving you? You're mad about it, okay, but what is it that you actually need? And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know. He should know. Well, why should he know? Like, if you don't know and you're you, and you can hear your own thoughts and read your own heart, and, like, you can't read my thoughts. I actually know what's going on in here, so I have to take on the task of learning that, and I should have learned that in childhood. I should have learned when I was thirsty, learned when I was hungry, learned when I was sad. I didn't. And so,
Yeah, that's really good. It's interesting, too, because one thing I think that we learned a while ago, too, is that if your brain stops developing, like, so there's this, how do I say this right? There's a disconnect between your brain and your body and your needs. Like, if you haven't emotionally matured to a certain level, that you actually may not know when you're hungry. Physically know when you're hungry. You may not physically know when you have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
You may physically not know when there's danger.
Yeah, we've actually fostered multiple kids who were well into their teen years and did not know when their body was indicating that they had to use the bathroom.
Like they would go days without eating
And never have been hungry because they didn't know what hunger
felt
was
like or what it was.
or have ever recognized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so again, their community failed them to help them mature to understand and articulate and
What
know
their need
what
is
their need
and
is
then how to meet it.
fill it. So another thing that in that child, the task for that child is discernment. So we say that word, but really, what does that mean? So it's just helping them to distinguish what's good for you and what's bad for you, helping them understand what do I need, how do I, what's good for me in this situation, or what's bad for me in this situation. How do I go and get that? How do I just determine what?
Yeah,
for me to grow.
Simple, practical things like, okay, there's a road and there's cars. Is it safe for me to cross or not safe for me to cross? That's a real practical one.
way to look at
but
it.
But it could be, I really like Johnny because Johnny has video games at his house. But those video games aren't games I'm supposed to be playing. So how do I determine and discern, is Johnny a good friend to me?
Right.
You know, or if Johnny's treating me really poorly, how do I discern that
That's
Johnny's
a big one.
Yeah, that Johnny's not being kind to me?
That's a really big one because the kids are like, I really like Johnny, but he's always mean to me, but I don't know. Yeah.
So those are all good discernment things. Yeah. Also, too, a big one is learning what brings personal satisfaction. So between the ages of 4 and 12, you should be learning what satisfies, what feels that feeling of satisfaction and completion of I did something and I really enjoyed doing it and I got it done. Yeah. So satisfaction might look like my room was a big mess and I cleaned it. Yep. And the feeling of satisfaction of a cleaned room, especially after it's a huge mess, is so good.
Yes.
And that's something that, and that's something that, honestly, your whole life is built on having satisfaction moments, having joy.
Yep.
And we had this revelation as we were processing the material this week. It's like, oh, God created us to not only experience joy, as in, I'm happy to be with other people, but also a deep sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that abundant life is about satisfaction. It's not about, I mean, there's been plenty of messages taught on never be complacent, never be content, those type of things. That's not what we're talking about. But this satisfaction and knowing that I've done something well, those are all things that the Lord really wants us to experience. Yeah. He doesn't want us to be doing things and living a life where we feel like no matter what we do, like we put stuff in a bucket and when we look at it, it's always half empty. He loves an overflowing cup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just a full cup, but an overflowing one, and the satisfaction of that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you even like Jim Wilder, again, the person with the Life Model Works that worked on this, and he was saying at one point that he knows people that actually at their dinner table they'll say, "Hey, what brought you satisfaction today?" You know, to their kids, and their kids like, "Well, I had this really hard math problem, and I stuck it out and I did it, and that it felt so good to do that." Or like Janelle said, my room was a mess. Or I tried this trick on my bike. It didn't really work, but it was so good just to try something.
So let's talk about the elements of what makes satisfaction possible.
Okay. Yeah.
Like in those situations that you're talking about, because this is a key kid task, is everything you mentioned has something hard in it.
Yeah.
Like you don't find satisfaction in easy things.
That's
like,
so good.
Like I walked into the living room. That was so satisfying, right? So it's really when you have a hard something in front of you
and you accomplish it.
And you push through and you accomplish it, which is a child task. So learning how to do hard things
brings satisfaction.
Can bring satisfaction. It is, I think, how satisfaction is a key element, ingredient to satisfaction, is learning how to do the hard thing and seeing it through. Not even seeing it through sometimes to successful completion, right? The satisfaction, I think, comes fully when it is a positive outcome. But the piece of learning how to do the hard thing kind of segues into the next piece that we talk about that kids need to learn is discipline.
And how to do hard things, persistence, being persistent, and how to stay at it, the stay at it attitude, which in this society, it's so, unfortunately, we've conditioned our kids, ourselves, this generation, that and honestly, it's one of the things that I struggle with too. It's like Janelle asked me to do something. I'm like, well, I'll try it and I'll do it, and then it still's not fixed or worked, and then like, well, I tried it. What is that? I mean, now that I say that, I'm outing myself, but it's true.
I'm glad he had the revelation.
But it's true. Like in that moment, it's like there's got to be some perseverance in that, and there has to be some stick to it to figure it out, and then also not let shame kick in, because here's the other part of that: not let shame kick in that I didn't get it done or I couldn't figure it out.
Figure it out. Mm-hmm.
So I have a phone and I have Google.
Yeah, thank God for Google.
And I have resources that I can
right. Oh,
call
that's good. Yeah.
and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. And they may or may not know how to do it, but they can say, but I know someone who does.
Right.
You might have to pay for it, but I do know someone who can help you do that. And so there's even satisfaction in that.
Right.
Like trying to do something, can't figure it out, and then going to your community and then them helping you navigate that. There is satisfaction in that for me. Like, okay, yeah, I may not have done it with my own hands, but I got it done.
Right, yeah. And so that goes back to what we talked about with the community needs to help you develop your resources and talents. But one of the child tasks is developing your own resources and your own talents and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
But also knowing, okay, so who can I reach out to, or what resources do I have in my hand to be able to complete what might be really hard for me. So like, I don't know why plumbing is coming to mind.
It's my family. So
yeah. So, but like plumbing, so you have a plumbing leak and you try to fix it. Well, one, you have a choice, right? And we're talking about adults at this point, but you'll see the mirroring in childhood.
Yeah.
Because this is how it comes out in the adult phase if you haven't completed this task and you don't know how to do hard things. So you might see a plumbing leak and you might say, oh, yeah, I don't know how to do anything about that. And you might fidget with it and now it leaks worse. And so, and it's a hard thing, right? And so a lot of times I think people give up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't know.
It's just going to leak, I guess.
I guess it's just going to leak. And you could have a lot of, this could be a metaphor for so many things in life, that things are leaking. And you might look at it and be like, I have absolutely no idea what to do right now.
Yeah.
And so then you just quit.
Yeah.
And you just walk away and let the thing in your life leak.
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
But really the next step is saying, okay, one, I don't know how to fix it. So I have a need.
So you've identified your need.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I have
Infant
a need.
maturity.
Infant maturity. I have a need, and so now I need to ask someone to meet that need. Oh, it's embarrassing. I should probably know how to balance my checkbook. I should probably know how to manage my finances.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a need in order to keep the faucet from leaking.
Yeah.
So what do I do? And we've talked about this before. I'm like, dude, you got Google. Thank God for Google.
I know.
Back in the day, we didn't have Google. And so Google is a great resource. You don't know how to fix the plumbing, you could probably Google it.
Probably Google it.
And then the next step is...
And that's a form of asking.
That is a form of asking. Hey, Google.
Hey, Siri.
Hey, Siri. How do I fix the leaking faucet? And then if you can't get that done, because you're trying to still meet your own need, which is really good. That's an important thing. Okay, I have a resource that's my personal resource, and I'm going to go find how to do this. And so then, but if I get stuck, then I can reach out to other people in my community to help meet the need and walk me through the leadership square.
Exactly.
And be vulnerable enough to do that. I just saw the time.
I know.
We have 10 minutes and we have to hustle.
This is so good though, guys.
Yep.
But long story short, yes. Okay.
Another key piece of discipline is learning how to wait for and work for what is good.
Yeah. The only thing I want to add to that first one with learning how to do hard things, persistent, it's so much easier to learn as a child between those ages of 4 and 12. So much easier. So for parents, if you've got kids in those ages, it's so much easier.
Do them the favor of teaching them how to do hard things.
In that window, because I'm 43, I'll be 44 this year, and I'm old. It's a struggle, guys. It's hard. It's hard to do hard things because you've been set in your ways of not doing hard things. And so do them a favor and teach them to do and help them walk through hard things. Okay.
Yep. So learning to wait for and work for what is good kills entitlement. We see a huge entitlement epidemic in our young people these days because they have never learned how to wait for and work for what's good for them. They want all those good things handed to them. Learning to say no to what's bad for them. We talked about that. Just and doing the things that are good and not just the things that you want.
Yeah.
And learning to decipher that. Again, at 4 years old, no idea, but it could look like as simple as, okay, it's time to pick up the toys. And I don't want to. Okay, well, but we pick up the toys because this is what's good. We enjoy living in a clean house.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm going to put away the toys, and then I'm going to return to what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
But I can do the hard
And
thing.
you can and you help them do that. You may need to walk them through that as they're younger. You know, you help you get down on your hands and knees and help pick up the toys, and you do it together. Some of the other things real fast are develop personal resources and talents. We talked about that, just helping them understand what their personal needs and their talents are. So you help them walk those out and do those things.
The next one we can't skim
No.
over this one, but knows self and takes responsibility for making self understandable to others. So a key childhood task is knowing you
Yep.
and learning you, again, you and what you need and what you like and what you enjoy and who you are.
Yep.
And then working on communicating that to others. So that's actually your job. If you struggle doing that as an adult, it's likely because it was missed in childhood. And so as a community too, it's our job to help kids do that and help adults who don't quite have that in them to do it. We want to be able to talk to people with good eye contact and know who we are. So I want to tangent on that, but I'm gonna.
We can't. We
I
got
know
it.
we're-
So I want to do this. We're gonna do a couple here. So there's also as we've alluded to. So there's things that if you don't have your task completely met, or you don't have the skills learned completely met in those phases, then it carries over to adulthood. So what
Yep.
you're going to see is child maturity holes. So there's obvious immaturity in adults in some of these areas, and so
when they weren't able to meet these tasks they could.
right. So one of them is they're often very self-centered, very egocentrical. How they can only take care of one person at a time. They
Yep.
were never. They
Because
never.
they weren't even taught to fully take care of themselves.
Yep.
So it's not they're not capable of taking care of other people. They're still trying to figure out how to take care of me, and so everything tends to still be about me.
Yep. Very selfish that way. They don't have a stable identity, or they act like different people in different situations. We talked a little bit about that a couple weeks ago, where you have a boss that one day they're happy, and then you walk in the next day and they're upset, and then you don't. After a week of this, you don't know what to expect when you go and walk into your office or your boss, because their emotions ride this wave, and they bring their emotions out in every situation, so you don't know what to expect when you go into the office.
The flip side of this is the people that you know that you're like, oh, I know exactly how they would act in this
Yeah.
situation.
Yep.
I know how they would react in this situation. Those are the people who have developed this well, and they are able to stay stable over time.
Yep. They struggle to persevere in difficulty and only do things they feel like doing. And so that could be somebody who has a lot of different jobs. It gets too hard for them at a job, and so they're like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, that ties to the other one too. Just maybe constantly chasing fun and excitement.
I was gonna
Constantly
I don't wanna-
looking. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. No, go please.
Constantly looking for satisfaction. So they're trying this and they're trying that, and they go from this career to that career or this job to that job. Go ahead.
But the thing with that too is that the flip side of that is they might find it hard to control their cravings, especially when they're under stress. It gets really hard. So what happens in that is that's where addictions come in.
Yeah.
And so an addiction is really anything that you are using to bring you comfort other than relationships.
Right.
And so it's very easy. So
So a lot of people who are struggling with addiction, pornography, alcohol, drugs, are often people who have gaps in their infant and childhood maturity that they're just trying to figure out how to fill. They don't know how to satisfy. We
Yeah.
talked about that being a key thing. They have a need and they're desperate to meet it, but they don't know how, and they don't know how to ask for help.
Right.
Suicide is another piece where that typically will come into play, where there's this deep need that they have, but they don't know how to articulate it, and they don't know how to meet it, and it leads to major hopelessness. So, so if you see someone or know someone or you yourself struggle with those patterns of addiction, the thing that you know you're not supposed to do, but somehow you keep finding yourself back there, take a look through this again, listen to this again, do some more research on it. We will have materials on our website, but likely there's a child need that you're just trying to meet. You're just trying to meet, and there is hope because you can grow through it, and you'll notice that those tendencies to try to soothe yourself through different forms will quiet. and you can overcome.
Yeah, we're gonna skip through some of this. This will be up. This outline will be up on the website this afternoon. So some of the things are really good in here, like fills life with unproductive activities despite God given abilities, experiences condition of frustration, disappointment because their needs are not met. So we want to move on.
One piece too that we want to talk about. So there's a flip side. So you have adults who did not meet their childhood needs, and they're very selfish and kind of scattered all over the place, not really living in the fullness of who they are. Can be egocentrical, all those pieces. But then you can also have children who, unfortunately, in their childhood were kind of flipped on their head. So this is more similar to my story, where as a child I was expected to be outside of my maturity level and be a parent. Be a parent to me, be a parent to my parents at times. And so I had this pseudo maturity where instead of learning how to take care of myself, I learned how to take care of everybody but myself. And so you may see this in yourself or in other people. I joke sometimes because I'm like, who fosters 70 kids? Which sounds really harsh. We fostered 70 kids if you don't know our story. But it's partially because I had learned how to take care of everybody else but myself. And it ended up really being a damaging thing to me, to where in my 40s I ran into a brick wall of Janelle is never taking care of herself, and Janelle cannot live another day without taking care of herself. And so and I had spent all those years expecting other people to take care of me while I was taking care of everybody else, and it led to a ton of disappointment, a ton of resentment,
fear,
because I never really just got to be a kid. And so learning now, like, oh, these were gaps that were missed. And so what can I do to grow in them? But so you can see that in leaders as well. When you see a leader who is really good at taking care of everybody else, not themselves, a leader who may be leading out of fear, getting their own needs met, trying to get their own needs met through others and caring for others, or being in a position where they care for others, you'll notice that. But the primary task to be completed by a child is to take care of themselves. And the primary resulting problem as an adult is not taking responsibility for self. So that could be in the situation I just shared of, I take care of everybody else but myself, or
very important,
it could look like I actually don't take responsibility for anything I do.
Because that's a big one, and we don't have the time.
No,
but
we'll just leave that right there.
But we'll let
Okay, so
I want to read this, and then we're going to go into really the goals for today. So you will know when a person has graduated from the child level of maturity to the adult level, because he or she will shift from being self-centered child to a both-centered adult. While a child needs to learn me-centered fairness, how do I make it fair for me? An adult learns we-centered fairness. How do I make it fair for us? So that's that transition out of childhood into adulthood. Is the transition of I can take care of me and someone else at the same time. Right. And so again, we're ramping up, right? So from 4, I'm only taking care of me. As I'm moving 12, 13 years old, I should be able to begin taking care of other people. And that is the goal. So let's talk about practical personal tasks. So all of this that you've learned today, which I feel like we sped through the last 10 minutes, but is about, now what can I do? If there's things that were on that list and I'm realizing, oh gosh, I don't know how to take care of myself, or I don't know how to do hard things. I think those are probably two of the biggest ones. Ask for what I need.
Or ask for what I need, right? Identify what I need and ask for it. Don't sit in the trigger. That is one very practical thing that you can do. So if you see or feel sadness, shame, judgment about anything, anger about what you learned today, don't sit there. Or if you notice that in life, again, if you're feeling triggered, take the time, just a few seconds, to ask yourself, what do I need right now? What do I need? What am I so upset about? What's that need that I need, and who can I ask to help me meet it? But that also leads into another piece that we have here is it's important when you realize that you have a need, that it's not just everybody else's need or job to fix it.
Right.
Step 1 as an adult is to ask yourself, can I meet this need myself?
Yes.
I'm hungry. Do I expect someone else to always make me a
food.
sandwich? And as a metaphor for life, that's a problem.
That's good.
So can I realize, one, I'm hungry, and two, I can make myself a sandwich.
Right.
I don't have to be mad that somebody else didn't realize I was hungry and didn't make me a sandwich without me asking. I can make myself a sandwich.
And the other part of that too is that if you, after you do that and you realize that you can't meet that need,
Right.
then
So let's say I can't make myself a sandwich.
for whatever reason, then you need to seek out others who have the skill or the ability to help you meet that need that you want to grow in, and ask them to either tell you stories, to walk you through the leadership square, but just be there with you in the middle of that need and walk you through that so you are able to meet that need if it is something that you should be able to meet yourself.
Right. Yeah. Don't usurp the ability to see that through to satisfaction. So like the plumbing
that's good.
issue.
Yep.
You know, it's a different story when the plumbing's leaking and you just quit, as to you identifying what the need is and you asking somebody else to help you meet it, and somebody walks beside you through to the plumbing stopping leaking.
That's good.
That's a growing opportunity.
Yeah.
And so if you notice that you're struggling in the area of childhood, start to identify leaking faucets in your life that maybe you can invite other people into to help teach you how to fix.
Because again, we're meant to live in community. Growth happens in community. Healing happens in community. All of that. So you definitely want to do that.
Yep. So practice doing hard things. Develop your personal resources and talents.
Yes.
If you notice that there's things that you really enjoy doing, go do them. Go find different ways to learn about them. If there's needs that you see that you keep running into gaps that you don't know how to meet, begin to ask yourself, what kind of resources do I need to be able to have on hand when I need to overcome them? Like relational circuits is one that we taught on, that I don't know how to recover when I'm really upset emotionally. I have no idea how to do that. Okay. So let's find some resources to learn when I'm not emotionally upset so that I can draw on those when I am.
Yep. You want to learn what satisfies you and how to control your cravings. So that's another one that you can practically do. And then practice. You're going to hear that in every video, every workshop we do. It's all about practice.
Yeah.
It's the everyday of it. So last thing we want to talk about really quickly is, again, thank you for sticking with us. We know we're a little over, but this is good stuff. So practical community tasks. So again, remember, this is about you as an individual and the gaps that you may have had, but it's also about you being the community and how can I help bring my community up to maturity. And so one of those is you want to help others identify their needs and encourage them to ask for their needs.
So if you have kids obviously, but if you have an adult in your life that is struggling and they're upset with you, this is, it has to be done with love and honor, but that's struggling to ask for what they need, feel free to provide the opportunity to do that. So we have young adults in our lives that are like, will drop hints about things like, so I have a place I have to be on Tuesday. Okay, you planning on walking there? But saying like, did you need something? Is there something I can help you with? And having them practice the skill of saying, can you give me a ride? Would it be okay if you gave me a ride? For some of the kids that we've worked with, super hard. Super hard. But not just giving them a pass and saying like, I knew when you
exactly
brought that
what
up,
you need,
that's what you needed because I heard you make the phone call and tell your friend you'd be there or whatever. But practicing the skill of asking is still a gift well into your 40s. Like one of the things that we continue to work on is when I'm frustrated or upset with you, I need to go back and figure out what it is that I need, and I need to come ask you for it.
Yep.
And that you shouldn't feel that you have this need to just meet. Like you should not feel frantic to meet a need you don't even know exists. So again, even slowing down in that moment and saying, okay, I actually can't meet any of Janelle's needs, my spouse's needs. I really need them to figure out what they need and ask for it. And
because I want to meet them.
Because I want to, right, if I can. But also to work together into helping us grow together in maturity and challenging each other in that. But not in a way, like this could be done in a really unhealthy way where you're like, I'm not going to do anything for you unless you learn how to ask for it.
Yeah.
We're not inviting you guys to be ugly to
Yeah.
each other.
No, don't do that.
But but inviting in kindness. Like if your spouse and you listen to this and realize, oh gosh, yeah, we kind of stink at that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's practice. Let's practice. If you see me needing something and I'm not asking for it, I want you to ask me to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something you need?
Yeah.
Is there something I can help you with?
Yep. That's so good. I think so. This one too is help others think through choices to the possible outcome. So self-care, problem solving, that's a huge one because it's a huge skill to learn, to be able to think through step 1, step 2, step 3, and this is the outcome of that. And then after you've done that, then you want to be able to help hand back the hard thing in that process. Provide them opportunity for self-management, self-success, and failure as well. You want to give them opportunity to fail and not be...
Gosh, failure is a gift. We were talking to somebody about this last night. Gosh, we so protect our kids from failure, and we are robbing them big time. Really, the goal is, hey, you're going to be here from 0 to 18, and guess what? My biggest gift that I can give you is the gift of trying and failing. Trying and failing. Because that's where learning comes. And the handing back piece, I think, is great because this is something that we learned in our healing process, is that there was a lot of times that you would, and I'm just going to be simple honest about this.
Go for it. Yeah.
But that we learned that our roles were a mess because I had learned how to be a mom when I was super young. So I was momming it hard, parenting hard. I was parenting my husband, and he was a kid, so he was very happy to be parented.
Yes.
And so
because I hadn't learned anything else. That was one of the areas that I didn't. One of the tasks I didn't learn.
Yeah. So he was a kid operating in child maturity. I was operating in child maturity, infant maturity,
pseudo maturity,
but pseudo. So I was good at taking care of everybody else but me, and so so I was very used to taking care of his needs. He was very used to me taking care of mine. And mind you, guys, 20 years into marriage, 20 years of this awful pattern of both of us being completely unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Because as we joke, it's super hard to be intimate with your mom.
Yeah.
And
or
so,
your kid.
Or your kid. And so it was all a mess, and neither one of us felt satisfied by it. And so one of the things that I learned how to do was hand it back. So when he would come in and he would hand me something that he felt he couldn't make a decision on because it was a hard thing or didn't know how to make a decision on it, I would literally physically take my hands and say, nope, this is actually yours to solve.
Yeah.
Nope, you need to go find resources to figure this out. Nope, who do you know that can help you answer this that is not me? Yeah. And so, and we talk about this because this is part of what we walked, but we share that part of our story because we know there's a lot of marriages that are in that same situation. So
and what
learning how to hand back in a kind, loving way is important.
And I will tell you this, it has been and still continues to be one of the best things because what it's done, it's helped me mature. It's helped me figure out ways because I didn't know how to lead my family. So it's helping me figure out ways to do that. And then I think the beauty of this too is that we're in it together. So it's not like I didn't know what she was doing, and so
you knew the whole
she's
time,
like, nope. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But we're in it together because it's for growth of her and growth of me, growth of our marriage together, growth of what the Lord's called us to do.
I need to stop trying to act like the parent. So I need to stop taking it from you so quickly, especially, I would say that was half of the problem too. It's like, oh, this is a hard thing for you. I can do it.
I can do it. And I need to stop acting like the child or a child and say, nope, actually I can do that. Even if I came with, it'd be sometimes too, again, we'll just be open and honest with it too. There's times where I would come in and Janelle would say, so is this child Tennyson or is this adult Tennyson? Because we can't, I'm like,
you can't have this conversation as two adults if you're not here as an adult. You're here as a kid needing a need met.
Yep.
Which sounds horribly harsh, but having the same language, he was able to say, oh, yep, I need to figure this out. Okay. Yeah. All right, cool. You're not my mom. All right. Okay. So let me figure out what I need and try again. And also too, that I think this is important since we're on the tangent and we're over time. One of the things in counseling one time I don't even remember what the situation was, but I came to her and I was like, hey, I'm super stuck here. And she's like, well, of course the child part of you would be stuck there. Absolutely. But guess what, Janelle? You're a full-grown adult. Like, you know how to take care of yourself. Like, look at you. You own your own business. You do all these things. You've taken care of all these other people. Like, guess what? You actually can do this.
Yep.
You just need to do this for you. You
Yeah.
don't need to feel frustrated that someone else isn't meeting this. You actually have the capability, because you
go
could
do
do it
it.
if it was somebody else asking you.
Yep.
So you need to take the time to ask yourself,
Yeah.
and honor yourself in that way.
So absolutely. So all that to say, hand back the hard thing. Hand it back to him.
Even back to yourself.
Even back to yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. And then you want to, one of the things too you can do is walk with someone through the leadership square. And remember, it's the I do, you watch. I do, you help. Then you do, I help. And then you do, and I celebrate. So that's a good way to just to teach and to train and to just be a friend, be a parent, be a community member. That's a fantastic way to do that. And then also you want to share, if we're dealing with family members specifically, you want to share your family history through stories. If they're not figuring out, or if they're having identity issues or not know who they are or where they fit in the family, share with them.
Yeah, start just sharing stories more.
Yeah.
Yep, you see your kids, and just period. If you have kids between the ages of 4 and 12, tell more stories.
Yes.
Tell more stories.
About
Tell
your-
more stories
yeah.
about your family, about you, about similarities between you all. So thank you guys for joining us. Thanks
Yeah.
for sticking with us. I'm so glad that we got to share this today. And
Me
gosh,
too.
I wish, I don't know, part of me is like, if we could just do a part 2, but we won't.
No,
Next week
no.
we'll be moving on to adult
Adult.
maturity.
Yep.
And
Don't want to miss that
yeah,
one
you
either.
don't want to, all of these.
All of these.
Keep growing with us, and keep listening, and listen to
Yeah.
them multiple times. Check out the resources. We felt like we had to speed through today, so
Yeah.
take the time to absorb. And
If you have questions, please put them in there. We'd love to answer any questions that you guys have.
Yeah.
Any comments, please also write those in there, and we'll be more than happy to respond to those at any time that you guys are watching this. So, again, thank you. We love you guys. It's been an awesome morning, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
all right, see you
All right,
later.
guys. See ya.
Bye.